Boss told me I had to clock out any time I left the till, so I did, every single time, but I used the commercial alarming 13. I used to work retail for a manager who thought the customer service meant chaining me to the register. One day he tells me I've been leaving the till too often. By too often he meant grabbing change from the safe, getting a roll of bags, even walking 5 feet to throw out trash. His new rule: if you step away from the register even for a second, you must clock out. Alright then. Next shift, I took him literally. At 9:10 am, a customer drops the jar that smashes near the counter. I clock out, grab the paper towels, clean it, clock back in at 9:16. 9:40, receipt printer jams. Clock out, walk 3 feet to maintenance, get the roll, clock back in at 9:47. 10:05, customer wants coins for the parking meter. Clock out, walk to the safe, get change, clock back in at 10:13. 10:42, I need to grab a bag of quarters for the till. Clock out 20 steps to the office, clock back at 10:50. 11:15, someone asks me to check if we have larger bags. Clock out, grab them from literally the shelf behind me, clock back in at 11:18. By the end of the day, my time card showed I'd left work 13 times. It added up to nearly 2 hours of unpaid breaks, all for basic stuff I was supposed to do. Payroll flagged it, HR called me in, and I showed them the email from my boss laying out the rule in black and white. Next thing I know, he's the one being chewed out. The rule vanished overnight, and magically we were trusted to use common sense again. Manager told us we had to do the dress code to the letter, so I did to the letter. I used to work at a company that had a business casual dress code. It was always sort of ambiguous. People wore polo shirts, button-down shirts, blouses, slacks, whatever. No one cared as long as you looked tidy. Then we got a new manager. In his first week, he sends out an all-staff email. From now on, the dress code is to be followed verbatim as written in the handbook. No exceptions. Alright. I dug out the dusty employee handbook and really read the dress code. It hadn't been updated since the late 90s. It was very specific. Men, dress shirt, tie, slacks, and jacket. Women, knee-length skirt, nylons, blouse, and closed-toe shoes. No polos. No cardigans. No khakis. The next Monday, I showed up in a suit and tie. I hardly ever wear jackets to work, so everyone right away noticed. And then other individuals started reading the handbook too, because after all, the boss read it precisely as written. The office was a time capsule by Wednesday. A co-worker was wearing shoulder pads and nylons in the August heat. Another guy pulled out his wedding gear. Someone even showed up at work with suspenders because the handbook allows it. Half of the staff sweated buckets because we were allowed to take our jackets off our bodies when sitting at our desks. HR was not happy, so they got a few complaints of hostile working conditions due to the imposed dress code. 1 week later, we got a new message. Use common sense in following the dress code. Business casual as done before is fine. Polos and khakis were once again in style. And our manager never brought up the handbook again. Access removed TSL my work by user Stunchella. I work in a role where I own a portion of the software. I don't work night, but I do system configuration for the portion I manage. I had admin access until one day IT removed it without warning and without notice. They claimed risk and board decisions. Of course I could rampage and get my access back because it saves the company a significant amount of money each year, as we don't need to use external contractors. There is also no one else in the company that knows my part of the system or how to create business rules, scripting, and coding for this particular system. While people know JavaScript, they would need to become familiar with the system, which will take time. Instead, Fine sends a list of all the things they now need to take over so the work still gets done. Noted there can be no delays in turnaround time despite there being an extra step. Noted that I will still need to approve every change in configuration. The list totaled to approximately 30 hours per week. It also requires 6M starts at points through the month. I made sure to also confirm they would also be required to come with me for all meetings regarding the system or data because I won't be repeating myself or duplicating my effort. Within 30 minutes the decision was reversed and I had my access back. I don't think that LL will be changing back anytime soon. Not when we work under separate budgets and their team always cry time and cost poor. Manager said I was useless at my job, showed him exactly why, by user theory large. long, sorry. TLDR at the bottom. This was about 20 years ago, so some of the dialogue won't be exact, but some of it is burned into my memory. At the time I was working in a toy shop, and it was coming up to Christmas, so you can imagine how busy we were. No, busier than that. Each worker was given a specific section of the store to keep tidy, and started with mine at the time was what we called boys' toys, all the action figures, and so on. However, I was also the only person other than managers who could process refunds, exchanges, and so on. And because boys' toys was right beside the tills and the managers could be anywhere no radios, the cashiers got into the habit of calling me for help. And it being nearly Christmas, there were asterisk of exchanges, refunds, and other things needing my intervention. Our store was franchised, and we had a district manager D, because he was kind of a D, and also his name starts with D, who had never worked the floor a day in his life. He had some kind of business degree. He visited a few weeks before Christmas, came into Boys' Toys an hour or so before closing, and got mad because it was messy and there were some gaps in the shelves. He refused to listen to my attempted explanations and stormed off. Next morning, he was right there at opening time. When we had our pre-start meeting where sections were assigned, he interrupted our manager to say, "I'm putting myself with OP today. She clearly doesn't know how to handle the sections, so I'm going to show her what's what." There was an awkward silence for a moment before manager went on with assignments. I kept perfectly silent. D trailed me to Boys' Toys and looked around. "Well, what's first, or don't you have a plan?" "Well, first I usually sorry, that's the tills calling for help. I'll be back in a minute." Dealt with the tills, returned, got halfway through explaining the first job and was called away again. By the time I got back it was 15 minutes into shift and he hadn't done any work yet. I have to give it to him, he stuck with it. The whole day I finally managed to show him what we were doing, and he schlepped up to the stock room and down to the shelves half a dozen times, tidied the same set of shelves because kids love throwing things all over the floor, watched as I was called away an average of 5 times an hour. I didn't usually keep track, but you bet your ass I did that day. He took his lunch when I did 10 minutes late because of a refund. He didn't apologize, of course. I was too lowly for that. But the next morning, at the opening meeting, my manager announced that from now on, Boys' Toys would have 2 staff as a matter of course, and that the managers would make an effort to be more available to the tills. TL, Doctor, district manager thinks I'm being lazy, arranges to show me what to do, realizes it's because I'm doing too much of the manager's jobs and not enough of my own. Do not speak to the regional manager. By user OK Computer 1,234,567. Many moons ago, I was the lowest guy at Renda Center. The regional manager, Greg, was visiting, and my manager, wanting all the attention, told me not to speak to Greg for any reason. When Greg arrived, he introduced himself and shook my hand, but I stayed silent. My manager gave a nervous smile and told him my name. Later, a phone rang for Greg. I yelled for my manager across the store that the phone was for Greg, even though Greg was standing right next to me. Greg asked why I didn't he just tell him directly. I silently looked at my manager, who awkwardly admitted he'd told me not to talk to him. Craig found it ridiculous, and my manager looked like a fool.